Welcome. Thanks for joining us here again today. This month, we are meeting up with our favorite lender, Mr. Tim Sisson. As you can tell, we are formatting this differently this month. And I think we're going to stick with this. I think we'll see how this goes. You and I both got a little bit bored of the sit back and forth and chit chat thing. So we're going to mix things up a little bit.
I used to watch a show just like this every day after school. So I'm jazzed up to be a part of this format.
Do the kids still say jazz? Is that still a
I
thing?
do. But I'm not a kid. So no.
Yeah.
No, they say 6, 7. That's what the kids say.
I still don't get it. I'm too old for that. I think even the kids are getting sick of that now, though. I think it's one of those things where, like, even the kids now, like, all right, okay, we got it, because everything runs its course. Everything does.
As soon as the parents take hold of it and start making jokes, then they're out on it. And I think we're already there.
Yeah, we ruin everything. That is for sure. We do that on purpose, though, just to mess with them. Yeah. All right. So the format, as you can see, we have 7 different topics, pre-approved by Mr. Tim Sisson. And what we're going to do is we have a minute and 120 seconds, 2 minutes to answer each of these together and go over our thoughts and our ideas on each of these topics that are relevant to just, in general life, as well as the housing and the buyer market. So we're going to cover an array of topics very quickly to help get you up to date and in and out. So that way you're updated and it doesn't take you a ton of time. Are we ready? Mr. Tim Sisson.
Ready to go, my friend.
That is amazing. I love to hear it. Cool. So the first one is going to be rates. You love rates. You just sent an email out about rates. Where are we with rates?
So we just had another 1/4 of a basis point rate cut by the Fed.
Yeah.
And like clockwork, every time the Fed cuts rates, our phones ring off the hook, asking how that affects their, somebody's mortgage rate. Unfortunately, they're not correlated. And sometimes the Fed will cut rates and mortgage rates go up. This time, it's all about Fed speak. Jerome Powell got on the mic and said that the Fed is going to start reinvesting in mortgage bonds. We don't know how much or how often. That's what kept rates super low during COVID 2020 and 2021. They were buying mortgage bonds like crazy. Now they've said they'd start again. We're not sure how much. If that does take place, mortgage rates should decline. If you look at the Fed dot plot, you have the Fed members are all over the place. Some want to hike rates. Some want 150 basis point cuts next year. So it'll all depend on what happens in May when a new Fed chair takes hold, and we'll see what happens.
This is a double-edged sword when I talk to most buyers, because when I sit down with buyers, I tell them, hey, once you've seen it on the news, the lenders have already factored that in, so don't get too excited. Yes, we want to see lower rates because it increases buying power, but at the same time, this is a great time for buyers. Like, you have a really strong advantage right now. You can get in now. Everybody thinks the rates are really, really high, and get sellers to kind of give in on some stuff. Like, I've seen a lot of concessions. I've seen a lot of repair allowances. I've seen coming down on price. Like, right now is a good time when, and if they're going to drop 1/4 of a point, 1/2 a point, yes. Will that make a big difference? Yes, it will. But so will getting $10,000 in closing help. And so will get that money you need to redo the bathrooms. Like, it's such a tough conversation I have with buyers, because yes, could you wait till rates go down? Yeah, but is it also really good right now when everybody's kind of giving in and sellers are getting a little antsy? Yes, that's also a really good idea. So it's a tough conversation I think I have.
If you take a step back and you look at the 10-year yield and the mortgage bond graph, it's almost straight across, because rates get better, rates get worse, and you can cut a line straight through the middle. They've been the same for what feels like 3 years.
Banks will make their money. It's not going to make a difference. They're making money. So moving on to the next one. So now that I've said that, I am seeing houses sitting a little bit longer. Tim, when you have your conversations with your buyers as you get pre-approved, how does that conversation look with sitting homes?
Yeah, I've had a lot of meetings the last couple of weeks with clients, and just saying that this is the most balanced I've seen the market in quite a long time. It's not necessarily that you're seeing buyers go in 50 grand low and getting those types of offers accepted, but sellers and buyers are working together, because buyers aren't out in droves right now. And maybe if the sellers had their house on the market for 30, 40, 60 days and they're keeping it on the market through the holiday seasons, that's a tell that they probably need to have that house sold. Because historically speaking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the holiday season, sometimes you see people take their house off the market during that time. If they keep it on, they're probably willing to work with you. And a lot of times I'm seeing now contracts come in with some form or fashion of concessions. Sellers and buyers are trying to work together to make sure the terms work for all sides. And that is the type of market we want to be in.
Yeah. I think our days on market somewhere around 58 to 60 here in Calvert, Southern Maryland. You can look at different areas, but we're somewhere around 60 days on market. And like you said, people around the holidays, like it's tough because uh, sellers are stuck on last year's prices, right? My neighbor sold for this much, my cousin sold for this much. And you just want to have that conversation with them, like, great, good for them. You should have sold last year then, like in a harsh way. Like, that's where it is. This is where we're at now. And so it is. The days on market's getting higher. Buyers are getting a little more strength. It's balancing out a little bit. They're giving in a little bit. Give it this. I'll give you some of that. Yeah, sure. Finish the basement. And so houses are sitting 60-ish days. Sellers need to kind of adjust a little bit. But buyers, this is a good chance to kind of come in and get a few things from them to make that purchase a wise decision for you. Or if you still want to wait till the New Year's, you're right. Most people that have their house on market right now during the holidays is because it's got to go. Like no one loves listing their houses over the holidays. So
one of the tells, and I've had a few of these recently, is appraisals that come in significantly higher than price. And that means that the comps are being used from, 4 to 6 months ago. And we had a negotiation of a price that was a little bit lower. And so these people are moving in with equity. Eventually that will catch up because now that's a new comp of a lower price. And eventually that will catch up to itself. And ultimately the appraisals will level themselves out. But lately it's been several have come in higher than list price.
Yeah, so next year is going to be the one. And we're gonna one of those topics is coming up here soon. But yeah, next year is going to kind of level out. I think we're going to kind of see how that goes. Mm-hmm. So everybody's sitting down and doing their end of year financials. I think we had a little bit of inflation. I think a lot of people kind of made some adjustments in their budgets. What conversation are you having with buyers as they plan out next year's financials?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with buyers that are looking to purchase in 2026. And one of the questions I ask is, are you expecting a raise, a cost of living raise or some sort of step or promotion or what have you? And if that's the case, and it has been in many cases, take that delta, whatever the raise is over and above what you're used to making, and take that and start to set it aside, right? You are already used to making X, set that extra, that raise, set that aside and maybe an account you can't touch, and or start making the reps of your mortgage payment. We've talked about this so many times on these videos. If your rent is $2,000 a month and you know the house you want to purchase is going to yield a mortgage payment of $3,000 a month, well, send your $2,000 to your landlord, but then put $1,000 extra away in an account you can't touch, so you feel $3,000 a month coming out and know what that feels like. Then you'll know in 3 to 4 to 6 months, is that a number I should stick to? Can I expand it, or do I need to retract it a little bit and dial it back because it's so hard to make?
Yeah, I think a lot of the folks that I've been dealing with lately they were thinking about buying even earlier in the year, really kind of pump the brakes a little bit because of the cost of things. I think as a culture, we've had to really stop and readjust what that bill looks like. What are those credit card statements starting to look like? What are those things? And now that we're starting to kind of get used to it, like, all right, my grocery bill now looks like this. My electric bill now looks like this. It's been kind of a recalibration, I think, because we've had inflation over the last few years. It was abnormal. That wasn't the typical inflation that we see. And so a lot of the buyers now are like, all right, cool. Now I know what that grocery bill looks like. I can start planning again for 2026 to buy that home. And so I've had a handful of people that were just pumping the brakes. Let me see what my new budget looks like. I don't want to do anything foolish. And now they're getting themselves ready for the next year.
Yeah. I mean, everything's more expensive. I get that. And I also have to be very cognizant of this time of year, talking to people, knowing that, hey, this is the time where people tend to have higher expenses just because of the holiday season, and have grace with that, but know that come January, it's time to strap down.
Yeah. The other thing I've been seeing a lot of people, not a lot, I'll say some, that they have the house and they have a ton of equity in the house. The payment's really low on the house. They want to buy that next house and they're thinking about renting out that first one to buy the second one. From your perspective, what do they have to do?
So one way that sort of house hacking is taught, and this is the kind of general playbook, is you purchase a primary residence, you live there for a while, you gain some equity, then you want to roll that equity into the new purchase. But if you do decide you want to rent it because your cash flow potential is so great, then taking a home equity line on that property early, not as you are about to purchase the next house, but take a home equity line on that property early, so that then you have a line of credit to then take out and then put towards the new purchase. That's a way that you can keep that property, rent it out, and then have the ability to roll some of that equity into your down payment on the new house. That is one way to do it. There's a lot of people that then just say, you know what, renting this house seems to be a lot of work, or we want to take all of our equity, then selling, or bridge loans, or that kind of thing. But the only way to really do it, renting it, and then taking that equity is to do a home equity line of credit. And a lot of people do it.
So I've the really what sparked this is because I'm sitting down with a few people who are like on the edge of buying and renting, and so when I send them the entire list, this is it. So I had a client who was under $2,000, and he wanted to be in St. Mary's, Calvert, or Anne Arundel. Then can you guess the number of active rentals?
2.
38. 32.
It feels like there's nothing.
38. And so some of these folks are like, wow, man, I can kind of I can make $2,200, $2,400, $2,600 on this. My mortgage is 13 or 14. And then I can buy that next house. So the conversations come up a little bit. And so I usually pass them back off to Tim and I say, hey, listen, there's a lot of factors involved, like your income, how much equity you have. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds, but I mean, you could really have 2 houses at the same time. One's paying for itself, and the second one's actually getting paid by that first one a little bit, because there's always a little equity when your payments are 24, 2,500 and your only mortgage is only 14 or 15. Like, that's helping pay for that second one a little bit. You really, if you played it right and you were very patient, could have 2 houses rolling at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's a way that people can really build wealth if you do it properly. But there are a lot of nuances to it, and you need to talk to Billy and myself early if that's your plan.
It's not as easy as it sounds. Plus, there's a lot of patience involved. So W-2 versus 1099, which one's better for you?
I mean, W-2 is easy, right? If you're a W-2 employer, you're likely hourly or salaried. Every now and then there's a commission-based individual that is W-2, but 1099 is, I'm going to need tax returns, and I'm going to need to look at a Schedule C to know what write-offs you have after that, because 1099 doesn't take out income tax, right? So 1099 individual then files a Schedule C. That's a form or fashion of self-employment, and they're going to write items off. So you make $100,000 1099, but you only reflect 60 grand net after all those write-offs. Now, there's certain things we can add back into it, but we're not going off the $100,000 number. We're using 60 as your qualifying income figure. So that's why W-2 is easier, because it's what you see, what you get. 1099 ultimately is just more paperwork, and you can still get qualified. You just need, maybe a longer history and things of that sort. So as soon as you go 1099 and you want to buy a house, make sure you contact the lender as soon as possible, because again, back to my previous point, there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah. So this is more of a Tim question. So that I'm glad you took up a little more of the time on that one. So from my perspective, it doesn't make a huge difference, 1099 or W-2. But personally, there's been times where, like, I've had that conversation with you and my accountant, like, should I W-2 myself a little bit and do things like that nature? And so as a business owner, if you are a 1099, make sure you think about that a little bit. Like, hey, listen, do I want to maybe W-2 a few employees or a few subcontractors or even myself or a spouse? So that way the numbers kind of balance out a little bit, but it's just something to think about in that regards. I cheat because my house is a W-2 and a 1099. So we have one of each in my household.
W-2 from an employer's perspective is a little bit more pricey to employ a W-2 employee, because you have payroll taxes, and maybe there's benefits, maybe there's not. And 1099 is the easy route. I'm paying you for your services, and here it is. I'm going to 1099 you. Is very easy from an employer perspective. But like you said, if you're a business owner and you W-2 yourself, that makes it a whole lot easier when you go to buy, because your lender can definitely use that W-2, the W-2 wages for qualifying, for sure.
So you really got to think about your goals as a business owner and as an investor, what you want to do. Next one. So when people ask about their max budget, that seems like every buyer, like, what is my max budget? And we work our way down. So what are some of the factors? What are some of the things that you use to determine their max budget?
Well, I think first things first, I rarely start with max budget, but every now and then that's what at the very end somebody will say, well, okay, you said that $3,000 a month attaches itself to this sales price, but what is my max? Just for, and they use the blanks and giggles thing. And so I'll give them that number, and essentially it's program dependent. So let's say a conventional loan, you can go up to 45% debt to income ratio, and that's your gross income versus all of your debts, including the new mortgage. Okay. Let's say FHA allows us to go to 55%, or VA allows us to go higher. It's all about what we can get approved. So the higher debt ratios, we definitely need good credit. You got to have some money in the bank. We will tend to lend you a little bit more buying power in that instance. USDA, again, if you're going USDA, great program. Your buying power is going to be limited, because they say, hey, we're going to give you 100% of the sales price. We're not going to let you have some astronomical buying power like FHA does. So again, there's such a sliding scale when it comes to maximum budget, but plug and play the income, plug and play the program. We know exactly how high we can take you. I try to stay away from that conversation though. I'd rather talk about comfortability.
Yeah, so I do the same thing. So once I have somebody that comes in and says, hey, this is my max budget, usually we start working our way down. So I'm like, oh, he approved you for 600. Cool. Let's look in the 550 range, 540 range, and kind of see how that looks for you. Because it happens like 99.8% of the time that once you go into that house that's at your max budget, you're going to love it. It's just going to have a little more features. It's going to have a garage. There's going to be more. It's going to have like that little next level. And I want you to be able to see the house that's at your 550 comfort zone. And maybe if you do a few things to it or clean up this or fix that, could you get it to that 600 range or whatever your max is range and still be comfortable? Because you're going to love the max and it's just going to be the kind of way it is. And a lot of people kind of like, oh, I want to make this work. And they do their finances in a jerry-rigged way where like they make it work in their head because they love that $600,000 house. And we'll do that. We'll go, if that's exactly what you want to do, we'll do it. But I try everything else to educate you and to kind of look at the two and compare the two before we max out any budgets, just to make you feel good.
In competitive markets, it makes a lot of sense to dial it back a little bit because if your max budget is 600 and you see that 600 house and you love it, well, as soon as somebody else goes to 610, you're outbid. But if you go to 550, you have room to go to 560 or 570 if it's a competitive situation. That's certain markets. Obviously, we're in a little bit of a different market now, but dialing it back a little bit gives you more room to then negotiate.
Yeah, that's the conversation I always have. So this is, we're going to end it with your favorite topic. Are your boys at Ohio State going to come home with a ring this year? Like, they're looking pretty good. They're beating people up.
I mean, listen, that Big Ten championship against Indiana, they lost to a good team. Indiana's really well coached. They're physical. Their defense just flies around the field. I think Ohio State can beat anybody in the country, including Indiana. But that's a rematch with Indiana is actually what I want because I want to be able to, I want to go through the best team in the country. And right now that's Indiana. I don't know. I mean, it's a good time to be a Buckeye fan. We're coming off a national championship and we have a really good team this year. We'll see what happens.
Try to repeat it. Yeah, I think Indiana now is in amongst this, like they're all of a sudden the flavor of the week. And so they don't know how to handle it as well as an Ohio State or some of these elite Alabamas, these programs. Like they're getting thrown into the limelight and all of a sudden, like it's going to be a bright light. I mean, the quarterback just won a Heisman. So that's a lot of pressure to all of a sudden go from a kind of a nobody. And internally, they're probably saying this is what we want. And we've always expected this, but being thrown out in the limelight, it's not an easy, like all of a sudden you get a big head and sometimes guys start putting a little less effort and spending more time in the social media and being out there doing interviews and promoting themselves. It's not an easy place to be. And I think Indiana's going to stumble. I don't know if they'll even make the championship game, to be honest. I think they're going to stumble earlier than that. Just because it's so hard.
Penn State had them on the ropes. Ohio State was
that
a
game.
Yanked field goal away from tying that game. So they've been up against, they've had adversity and they've overcome it so far. I'm unlike most other Buckeye fans. I belong to a very cocky fan base. I'm able to see things a little bit objectively. And Indiana they're a very good football team.
They're good.
So we'll see what happens.
I don't know if it'll be this year. It might be next year for them. I don't know because, like I said, going from like zero to all of a sudden being in the limelight, that's not easy sometimes. And not every program can handle that.
Cignetti's never really been, their head coach Cignetti's never really been on this stage before. So it's new to him. It hasn't phased him so far. We'll see.
All right, so we're going to wrap out. And so the last thing we're going to do today, because it's December, I'm going to give you a chance. What is your prediction for next year's real estate market?
So I think that if we are to see improved interest rates, let's just start with interest rates. If we're going to see them improved, it's probably not until late 2026 because there's a new Fed chair going in, I believe in May. Most likely they're going to align with the current administration's desires, which is lower rates. So once they get into that chair in May, they need a little bit of time to kind of exact their influence, which would be Q3 or Q4 of last year or next year. So if we're going to see lower rates, that's the time it's going to be. I'm not guaranteeing it, but if that's going to happen, I think that's when it will happen. Home prices, I think we're going to stay on the same trajectory. It seems that DMV, we're going to wake up in 2026, at the end of 2026, and we'll have 5 to 6% appreciation. It is a safe place to put your money. Because again, even though we have this kind of market plateau, I don't see necessarily some drop off in home value because there's still a lot of buyers out there that are looking for homes, and they're just not on the market currently. So that's my take on it.
All right, so I'm with you. I think next year is going to be a nice even keel. I think this past year was a little slower than we had hoped, but I think next year we're going to have a nice even keel. It's not going to be so crazy like gangbusters, and it's not going to drop off. It's just going to be nice little level playing field, and I think things will pick up a little bit than we were last year. On my end, there's a lot of part-time realtors. There's a lot of like side hustle realtors, and I think with the way that slow as it was, we're going to see hopefully a little bit of drop off and see some of the full-time people stepping up again and getting some of that business back that your cousin's aunt's niece who just got her license snagged that listing or snagged that house, which happens. I mean, it's in ups and downs. It's just part of the cycle. So I think we're gonna have a little bit less than that because it was a rough year. And every time you see a rough year, you see fewer and fewer of those. And so it'll be nice, even keel. Everybody will do pretty well. Everybody's gonna walk out with money in their pockets, not go crazy, but everybody's gonna do really well. Sellers are gonna do really well. Buyers are gonna get into houses with a little bit of like help, sometimes a closing help and some repairs and things. And it's going to be that nice normal that you and I usually talk about where it's a nice even balance. And I think that's what next year is going to be.
Normally we do video content that it's sort of targeted to either first time home buyers or move up buyers here in our market, sphere of influence type stuff. I want to call out that anybody who has a desire for a second home in a vacation area, those are the types of markets currently that have the biggest market corrections.
Good deals.
You see when it's tough for the American consumer, that's the property that they dispose of first, that beach condo, that beach house that maybe they purchased in 2021 when things were really, really good. We're seeing those markets have big corrections. So if you're looking to buy a beach house or a condo, a vacation property, now might be a great time to pursue that because you might be able to get, I'm not going to say it a deal, but you won't have to pay some premium to obtain one.
That's awesome. All right, Tim, as always, thank you for your December. I hope you and the family have a wonderful holiday, and we'll hit you back up to see how our predictions start to phase in when it comes to January. I think we like this style. We might do it again next month and kind of see how it goes.
I love this. Merry Christmas to you and all your followers. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.